Please be aware, in this podcast series we talk about all areas of safeguarding, which some people may find upsetting. So please make sure you're okay listening to today's topic. Be mindful of those around you, such as children, that you might not want to listen in. Hi, I'm SSS Safeguarding Director Sam Preston.
And I'm former head teacher and content author Sarah Spinks.
So today we're talking about the safeguarding risks of sexism and misogyny. Misogyny and sexism, they may often be used interchangeably. So before we get into the discussion, Sarah, could we perhaps just be clear about what each of these terms mean?
Yeah, I think it's really important to distinguish between the two terms. You know, sexism relates to gender stereotypes and the resulting discrimination. However, misogyny relates to the feelings of dislike and hatred of women.
So would it be fair to say that all misogynists are sexist, but those who are sexist may not be misogynist?
Yeah, I think so. You know, while misogynists may present as being biased with bigotry, discrimination or intolerance, their dislike, contempt and prejudice against women is ingrained. A misogynistic person, you know, is characterised by their aversion to, hatred of and or prejudice against women. Misogyny, you know, may manifest physically and verbally.
So with misogyny, we're looking at, behaviours directed at women like, voicing contempt and hatred, showing contempt through physical actions, that sort of social shunning and ostracism and exclusion from groups in society, sort of verbal, physical intimidation, verbal and physical abuse, sexual harassment and even rape.
Yeah, that's right, Sam. Yeah.
So both sexism and misogyny are significant issues in schools today, and we'll explore why in a minute. But reflecting on your experience as a former head teacher, could you maybe outline the impact sexism and misogyny have on the well-being and education of pupils?
Absolutely. You know, this isn't an exhausted list, but this is what springs to mind, really. You know, gender stereotyping. So schools may perpetuate traditional gender roles and stereotypes, which can limit opportunities and expectations for students based on their gender, and which can lead to girls being discouraged from maybe pursuing things like STEM fields, or boys being pressurised to conform to, traditional masculinity. Bullying and harassment. Sexism and misogyny can manifest as bullying and harassment, including verbal, physical, cyberbullying. Girls are often targeted, but, boys can also experience harassment for not conforming to gender norms. Unequal treatment. Gender bias can lead to that unequal treatment in the classroom, such as teachers giving more attention and opportunities to one gender over another, which can impact on students' self-esteem and performance. Even limited access to education. In some regions, cultural norms and traditional beliefs restrict girls' access to education. It can lead to lower literacy rates, limited economic opportunities, and a cycle of inequality.
Gosh. So what about the curriculum, Sarah?
Well, I think that's really important. Sexist curriculum, some curricula may reflect and reinforce sexist beliefs or omit the contributions of women in history, science and other subjects. This can perpetuate the idea that women are less important or capable. Even in my own personal experience of naming my classes at my last school, and I suddenly realised we were naming them after all dead white men in the history of our city. We have to be really mindful of these things. Sexual assault and consent education. We need to teach about consent, and the prevention of sexual assault is critical in schools. Misogyny can contribute to a culture that normalises or excuses sexual assault, and schools should address this head on. And there are other things about gender and role models, such as the gender pay gap awareness. Schools often play a role in shaping students' perceptions of the world, raising awareness about the gender pay gap and income inequality. It's important breaking down these disparities. There's also the idea of the lack of female role models. The underrepresentation of women in leadership and STEM fields particularly can discourage children and particularly girls from pursuing these areas. And schools can play that role in providing exposure to diverse role models and career options. I think that's really important. As well as thinking about maybe gender neutral facilities, encouraging schools that have gender neutral facilities such as bathrooms and changing rooms can help transgender and gender non-conforming students feel safer and more comfortable. And we're seeing that particularly in the latest guidance from government with regard to trans children as well.
Yeah, that's quite a list. I'm also thinking, though, about cyberbullying and social media. I mean, social media platforms can amplify sexism and misogyny, making it really essential for schools to educate students about that responsible, online behaviour, digital citizenship, the potential consequences of online harassment. And, social media that can really impact, significantly, that sexism and misogyny that contributes to, various threats and challenges in ways like online harassment, using social media platforms to target pupils, particularly girls, with misogynistic comments, insults, threats, that type of thing, which can have such a serious emotional and psychological consequence. And we know cyberbullying can take many forms, sharing inappropriate images, spreading rumours, using derogatory language. This kind of behaviour can create a really hostile online environment for pupils. And then you've got things, like slut shaming, victim blaming, can really perpetuate those harmful practices. For pupils, especially girls, again, they're judged or criticised for their body image, clothing, behaviour, and can lead to victim blaming in cases of sexual harassment or assault. And also just thinking about sexting, that non-consensual, sharing, which can be a form of sexual harassment with severe consequences for victims. I've spoken a little bit about negative body image. Social media can promote such an unrealistic, beauty standard, contributing to those, body images, eating disorders, low self-esteem, and, particularly among girls, but also we're seeing that, amongst, young men. Then also maybe, that spreading those harmful stereotypes, just how that affects pupils, how they perceive themselves and others, as well as you've, alluded to, influencing career choices and life goals.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. And of course we've got, grooming and, online predators, who, use social media to groom, for exploitation or to engage in predatory behaviour. And really just, in terms of social media, that reinforcement of sexist attitudes, and beliefs and users may be exposed to content that normalizes or even glorifies misogyny.
Absolutely. And, and there's online misinformation as well, that misinformation and disinformation that can spread rapidly on social media, including false or misleading narratives that target specific genders. And young people may not always fully understand their limited privacy and how to protect their privacy on social media, which can lead to that exposure of personal information and potential risks. It's really worrying picture.
It is, and I mean, we've come up just thinking about this now, Sarah. We've come up with quite an extensive and quite shocking list. So let's try and sort of focus on what we can do positively. What can schools do to try and address or mitigate these safeguarding threats?
Well, I think firstly, we have to be realistic. We're talking about behaviours that are embedded in and promoted by societal behaviours. But schools do have an important part to play, and I'd focus attention on, digital literacy education, teaching pupils about responsible online behaviour, really reinforcing critical thinking and really thinking about how to protect their own online privacy, really. Very, very crucial steps for each child to take.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in there and say, as practitioners, engage with social media companies to advocate for better moderation, content removal and measures to protect young users. And if you don't feel you have the knowledge or that expertise to fully, tackle this, speak up. There's lots of resources available to guide you. We've actually produced some links in one of our parental resources, which is available on our website, which talks you through how you can do this. But access, there are resources out there you can access to enable you to do that, and there's also people as well with the expertise to help you advocate.
Absolutely. And other things you can do, you can promote gender equality and respect, through educational programs and campaigns that challenge stereotypes of misogyny. Really establish clear reporting mechanisms within your school, for pupils to report online harassment and ensure swift actions taken against perpetrators. Schools can develop and reinforce anti-bullying policies that specifically address online harassment and cyberbullying. And think really carefully about that mental health support that schools can offer. Offer counselling and support services to help students cope with that emotional toil of online harassment and misogyny. And as you've alluded to before, Sam, educate parents about the risk of social media and provide guidance on how to protect their children online. Things have changed so rapidly since most parents were of the same age. And it's really important that we support parents for them to understand the world out there.
Yeah, and as I said, please check out the website. We've got some absolutely fab free parental top tip resources. Schools can place the links on the parental hubs of the websites to just as a resource to help guide parents.
Absolutely, do check out our website. There's lots on there.
So if you had to sum up our conversation today, Sarah, there's a big ask here because it's such a big subject, this, but what would be your take-home message?
Well, I think, remember, addressing sexism and misogyny, it does require a collaborative effort involving schools, parents, social media companies, and the wider community to create a safer online environment for pupils. But reducing sexism and misogyny also requires curriculum reform, teacher training, policies against discrimination, harassment, and fostering a respectful and inclusive school culture that promotes gender equality. Head it on, don't hide. It's important to create a safe and supportive environment where all children and young people can thrive, regardless of their gender. Don't shy away from facing it, and have your policies and procedures in place to support those young people as they navigate this really difficult life as it stands today.